we walk into law firms sometimes and they're explaining some of their processes, and I'm like, wow, that is dumb. You guys know it's dumb? And they're like, well, it's just the way we've always done it. I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on why doing more isn't always the answer to growth, how to know if your team's capacity issues are really capability issues, and how to streamline your firm without sacrificing quality.
Output doesn't always increase as you add headcount. Sometimes you bring on more people and it creates more complexity, and it actually reduces output. And sometimes you can accomplish more with smaller teams.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. And here we are with Michael Branding representing his own podcast here with the Game Changing Attorney podcast.
They gave me a shirt. It says the Game Changing Attorney podcast. It's like Inception, right? So we got this logo here. We got a logo on the mic. We got a logo on this screen. We got a logo behind us. Yes, it is Inception. But I figured, if we were recording a podcast today, I'd wear the podcast shirt. Right. There's also a podcast hat. I was wearing that last week.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. It's like they've embroidered it on there. It's very cool. Jessica, what are we talking about today?
Well, that's a surprise.
Okay. All right.
But I do want to talk about something else before we get into the questions. Is your recent hobby?
Okay.
Yes, it has become a group activity at home that maybe I did not sign up for. But tell us about your hobby.
The garden?
The garden.
All right. Yeah, I've been doing some gardening lately. And so I never really grew any plants growing up as a kid. And our longevity doctor said that, you know what, you should consider gardening. So I go online and I'm like, okay, well, what kind of tech exists in the world of gardening? Because I know what people are thinking, right? You go outside and you got to plant some trees, some different plants.
We also have turf in our yard.
Yes. So that became a barrier to entry. Where we're going to plant this stuff. And then I thought, well, what about indoor gardens? Like, does such a thing, exist? And of course it does, right? Like hydroponics, et cetera. And there's this, I don't even know what you would call it. The name of the company is Garden with a Y, Gardyn. And essentially you can buy this structure. It's for indoor use, and you can grow up to like 30 plants at a time, and everything from like vegetables, fruits, flowers, etc. And it kind of does it all for you. It's the way I would describe it. Like, you have these pods. They're called like Y pods, and it's kind of like a Keurig pod. Depending on what you have, right? So we have like tomatoes and cucumbers and like bell peppers.
Your favorite, cilantro.
Cilantro, right? We got the cilantro plant. We put that one kind of in the corner. And basically this thing waters the plants, and it does sunlight, and it has a cool app, and it automates the whole thing.
You can watch videos of the plants growing.
It does the time lapse of showing like your plants growing. But there are things that you have to do, right? So it basically, like, I just did, I trimmed.
You just pruning.
I did the pruning.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to be messing around with the roots. You've got to, of course, refresh the water. You got to put in plant food. You got to balance the pH levels. Like, there's that. But when you think about it, we've got 30 different plants, each with their own different types of requirements. And I've started to learn about this stuff, right? How much each one needs in terms of sunlight. It's fun, right? So like, you wake up in the morning, like, first thing I do, I go down there, I check on the garden.
Check on the plants.
Yeah, exactly, because we have it in our kitchen. And I just see how it's doing. The girls think it's cool. If you're a serious gardener, you're gonna roll your eyes at this, and you're gonna be like, "Look, this is ridiculous. You don't have to do anything." But for somebody who has a full-time job, perhaps, and is both a father and a business owner, right? Something like this enables you to have a garden and also support your 30 different plants.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna report back when the plants actually grow and become.
You could eat this.
I could eat the
parsley,
cilantro now.
The cilantro, yeah, like that. That's good to go. Cucumbers are going to take a while. Tomatoes are going to take a minute. But even then, like I have in the app, I can look up each plant and I can see like the harvesting requirements and like see how long it's going to take each one to grow. And it's cool.
It's when two worlds collide, gardening and tech.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. So I think it's pretty cool. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. And they make like mini ones too. And we just got the one with the 30 plants.
Yeah.
And the first step is you have to build the whole thing. All right. So there's that piece too. It comes with like 30 different pieces. You have to assemble it. And then
That's where the group activity came in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we got the LED lights that go with it, and you have the lighting schedule, the watering schedule. It's pretty cool. And again, you look at it and say like this is quite an investment of time and money when you could just go to the grocery store and buy these plants, right, and these vegetables. But that's not what it's about. It's about creating something. It's about being able to I don't know. There's something to be said. Yeah, it's the journey. It's fun.
Yes.
It's interesting. You learn new things. So I don't know. You can judge me. Maybe there's somebody who listens to this podcast who has a garden of their own.
Perhaps you should shoot Michael a text.
And then, and your dad was over the other day, and he's like an actual serious gardener, like a real
gardener. Yeah, he's
gardener.
like a master gardener.
I showed it to him, and maybe he was trying to, be nice to me, but he was like, "Oh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. You can grow anything. You can even put your own seeds in there.
You can. Yeah, he probably was fascinated by that. So kudos to you.
Exactly.
So
rain or shine, the garden grows because it's indoors. All right, Jessica, welcome to the AMMA. You guys submit your questions. We answer them here on the show. This has become, surprisingly, our most popular format of episodes. And you can text us at 404-531-7691 with your questions. It could be about anything about business, brand, team, culture, leadership, marketing, etc., life. I mean, maybe somebody will ask a political question one day. Right? I don't know if we'll answer it on the show.
Maybe they won't.
Because we stay out of a few different things, right? We just keep this focused on a few core tenets of leadership and business. Jessica, you compile all the questions. We usually have we get thousands of these things at this point, but you compile them, and usually there's a certain ones that they like kind of group into certain topics, certain themes. So I'm curious as to what we've got this week, but let's get on with it.
All right. Well, let's jump right in with question number 1. Michael, I'm frustrated because I've spent the year really focusing on growing my practice and I've seen little payoff. I started as a criminal defense practice and have since added family law and estate planning in response to client request. I've even doubled down on my marketing and have been trying out a ton of new channels. We launched a TikTok, YouTube channel, and have been investing heavily in SEO. I know growth takes time, but I can't figure out why we're not seeing better outcomes despite all the effort we're putting in. Any thoughts on what I might be doing wrong?
Well, the way you described it, and it's tough without knowing more context, but my initial thought would be that it sounds like you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, you meet these ambitious people, and there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. We're ambitious. But we've talked about being a squirrel on this podcast before, and sometimes you can have an idea, and then you can have another idea, and you can have another idea, and you can have a lot of different, things that you want to execute on. And you end up doing so many things. I talked about this on a previous podcast where years ago people were talking about having multiple streams of income, and they thought they needed to have like 8, 9, 10 different streams of income to be wealthy. And what they found was that the way that you actually became wealthy was through concentration, through like dialed in focus on one thing, one business, as opposed to having like 8 different,
split focus.
Yeah, exactly. And you can preserve wealth through diversification, but you really build wealth through concentration. I think it's the same thing here in the sense that it sounds like you're doing a lot. I mean, you're expanding all these different practice areas, and it's all in the past year. At the same time, you have all these different social platforms, all these marketing initiatives. We really had time, because when you split focus, you're allocating resources to different buckets. And does that allocate enough resource to each individual bucket to be able to see it through and know whether it's actually successful? Because really what's happening here is that, if you have, let's say 100%, right, and you can allocate, you allocate to 10 different buckets, 10% each, right, then none of them are getting more than 10%. So that means that it's probably going to take more time to see if any of those things are going to pay off and be successful. It's in fact, wow, it just hit me. Coming back to the garden, the reason I did the pruning?
Why did you do the pruning?
Because it told me that when you water it and you're like with the plant food and as you're growing the stuff, that if it's got for some of these plants, you don't want more than 3 sprouts, or in some of them it's 1 sprout. So if it's like an herb, you can have 3 sprouts. If it's something like a fruit or vegetable, it's 1 sprout, and it's because it will disperse the like plant food resource, water, etc., right? And it means that none of them are going to get
the concentration.
that concentration, right? So it comes back to
Wow,
gardening.
did not even know
I
that
know.
was coming today.
Once it hit me, I was like, wow, what are the odds? So it sounds like you're doing a lot. And really looking at it from the standpoint of have each of these ideas that you had really had time and sufficient resource to know whether they're successful or not. Because what may have happened is you just didn't dedicate enough time, energy, and focus to each one. So it's not to say that they're not successful, it's just you don't know yet. You haven't gotten enough data back. I mean, we look at this when we run marketing campaigns. I always like to ask in terms of like, what investment do we need to make over what period of time to know if this is going to be successful or not? And that comes back to how much data do we need to get back? And you can make a much larger investment up front if my focus is time. So I want to spend the least amount of time figuring out if something's going to be successful. So we are going to get more data back on the front end. But that doesn't always work depending on the campaign type. Sometimes you want to be able to like you test things for a year.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it from the standpoint of, okay, well, we need to see over 12 months whether this is going to be impactful. And that way you can account for like seasonality, you can account for just et cetera. You can run enough tests.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing. And when I'm determining to cut an initiative, I always think, have I gotten enough data back? Like, have we invested enough over a long enough period of time? You know, a lot of like traditional advertisers, for example, in the legal space, if they've done TV advertising, they know that for the most part, unless you're willing to commit at least a year, like you don't even start to break even until a year into a new market. So if you're going to get cold feet after a month or 3 months, then you probably shouldn't do TV advertising, right? Because it takes a while to
long game,
build a brand in a market, penetrate a market, right? This is the same thing when people start a new firm. They're like, I want to build a brand. It's like, well, great. How long do you think that takes? You know, do you think it takes a couple of days, maybe a few weeks, or years? It takes years to do that. So just because you try out some initiative and it's not successful doesn't mean the initiative is not successful. Like, look, Facebook ads work. Like, let's be clear. As a whole, there are people in this world that make money on the internet and that run ads on Facebook and are successful. It's the same thing we could say SEO works and billboards work and TV works and radio works. It works. Okay? Now, the way you're doing it, if it has not been successful for you, it doesn't mean that the medium is unsuccessful. It just means that perhaps your approach has been unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And maybe you have not approached it the right way, or you've not invested enough money, or you've not invested enough time, or you just simply have not performed enough experiments. But it's not to say that this medium is unsuccessful. It absolutely works. Everything works. Emails work. Text messages work. Like webinars work. Conferences works. Writing books works. Podcasts work, etc. But it just comes down to, have you performed enough experiments to learn what is working, what's not, so you can iterate and ultimately get there.
Exactly. All right. So moving on to question number 2. Hi, Michael. I wanted your advice on something. I run a PI firm in North Carolina, and I have a team of about 20 people. We've been growing a lot this year, which is great, but my team constantly says they're stretched thin and need more help to handle our caseload. So we recently hired 3 more people. The problem is that every time we bring someone new on board, we somehow always seem to need more help within a few months. I'm starting to wonder if there's something wrong with the way we operate. It feels like we're always one person away from having enough capacity, but we're never quite there. What am I missing? They have 20 people and they hired 3 more people.
The 3-body problem.
Wow, you got all the zingers today.
That's right.
Great show.
Great show.
Yeah.
Right? It was on Netflix. It got renewed for a 2nd season.
Yeah.
Amazing series of books. But okay, so back to the question. Truly phenomenal show.
Yes, it is a great show.
If you're throwing bodies at problems,
yes,
before you know it, you're going to realize that you don't have enough bodies to throw at the problems. And this sounds like you just really don't do very good capacity planning and really understanding in terms of like, how do we do proper load balancing? Like when we're hiring somebody, like we know exactly what is that person's capacity because we have data. And we also have data that tells us, okay, at this point, it's time to hire. We used to not. We learned this painfully over time in the sense that you can now project and say, okay, at this point, once we've hit this level of capacity or this workload or so on, now it's time to start looking and sourcing for someone. We know here's how long it takes to source, here's how long it takes to hire, here's how long it takes to onboard and train, and really the time to value. And then based on that, you work out your projections on when you start hiring and for how many roles and even what type of roles. But the fact that somebody says, oh, I think we need to hire more people is not very scientific, unfortunately. Correct. Because if, let's say you're hiring case managers, you think, okay, well, how many case managers do we need to support this number of cases, right? Same thing with paralegals, same thing with attorneys. And you figure that out for your firm. This varies by firm, this varies by practice area. But if you don't know those things, you're flying blind. And if you don't know those things and you're just relying anecdotally, it might be true. It could still be true that someone says we need more support. That can still be true. But if you're not making a very data-driven decision, you're going to fall into a loop potentially where you're hiring people and it's not exactly solving any sort of capacity challenges because there's not a real standard set, and maybe there's not a great process set around how many cases can one person handle, right? And what is the right mix for our firm? There's going to be different firms that operate at different levels of efficiency. They can provide great service and client experience because they've leveraged technology and now they can take on more cases. There's other firms that do not have those things. They're taking on less cases. There's some firms that are understaffed and spread thin, and you start to see the quality of that client experience and the workup start to suffer. Yeah. So it's really taking the time to audit this and figure that out on the front end before making a hiring decision, because what happens is you can never satisfy the needs of a team member when they say they need help, and you say, okay, well, how much help? And it's like, okay, another 2 people. And then before you got 2 people, then you got 2 more. And then before you know it, you've got this bloated organization where you are struggling to turn a profit because you've got insanely high headcount and it has not meaningfully made an impact on your output. It doesn't always scale with each person that you add unless there's great systems in place.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
I remember doing this, I think it was 2019 or so. Same thing. Everyone's like, we need help. So I'm hiring, and I'm throwing a marketing assistant here. I'm doing this and that. And then you get the people in, and a huge mistake on our end in terms of, did we actually map out in the beginning what this person would be doing? Because at the end of the day, no one's coming to save anyone. And so there are some things that are really key for us before hiring now is, one, whoever is requesting this from a hiring manager perspective, could be a capacity role. That one is a little more simple. But if it's another role and it's like, I need help to free me up, okay, well, as you free up, what will you be doing to add value to the business? So as things are coming off of you, what will you now be contributing in a different way? And then also, before this person's brought on, like, what are their first 90 days? Like, what does this actually look like? Visualize that to make sure that when this person's coming in, everyone's set up for success all around.
It all sounds good, but nobody wants to do it. And that's the thing.
Nope, don't.
Just hire them. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, don't do that. And made that mistake.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can look at it from the standpoint that output doesn't always increase as you add headcount. And there's a lot of organizations that are obsessed with the headcount. Like, let's just, we have this many employees. Like, they use it as a badge of honor, right? The same way people use like revenue as a badge of honor. Yeah. Like, how about we talk about EBITDA and profit, right?
Right.
Like that's interesting. Sometimes you bring on more people and it creates more complexity, and it actually reduces output. And sometimes you can accomplish more with smaller teams because there's a greater amount of focus and there's less like channels of communication. Like, managing large teams and complex teams, there's a load to that. There's a lot of friction associated with that. So I'd be very careful before adding headcount to ensure that it's absolutely necessary and the organization is operating in a very optimal way already. Because if it's not and you're adding headcount, then you're going to add bloat and probably more complexity, and output could go down.
Yeah, and next thing you know, you're going to be writing in 3 months and saying, I can't retain people, because you're throwing them into wildfires and you're not setting them up for success.
The wild, wild west.
The Wild West. So question 3 to round us out today. My team keeps complaining that everything takes too long to get done, even simple tasks. What used to be quick decisions now seem to require multiple meetings and approvals. When I first started the firm, we had 3 people. Now we have over 60 people. And although I'm proud of what we've built, I'm starting to wonder if we overprocessed and created unnecessary bureaucracy. I started my firm to get away from big law policies, but I feel like we're slowly creeping there. How do successful firms maintain quality control without getting bogged down in processes?
Does that sound familiar?
Very familiar.
Yeah, look, I empathize. So you want to put processes and systems in place because that's the right thing to do. And as you start to scale, you start adding more processes and more systems. And before you know it, you find yourself at a place where you've got all of these different systems and all of these processes. And when's the last time you cut things down? And when's the last time you simplified? And if you put yourself in the shoes of one of your team members, maybe they're updating things across 3 different platforms or 4 different platforms. Right. And it's not because it's just you intended it to be dumb. It just became dumb because you were always adding as opposed to subtracting. There's always like increasing complexity instead of simplifying. And this happens just because it's like, okay, we're going to start something new. We need a process around it. Okay, we started another new thing. We can put a process around that, and that overlaps with with this platform. So we need to update it in both places, and we need to make sure that they sync. And then here's how we're going to audit this stuff, because those things have to happen. But it doesn't ask the question. Most people don't look at it from a first principles approach and think, if we're starting over today, right, and it didn't already exist in this way, if the system didn't exist the way it does now, well, how would we do it? right? Not, oh, here's how we've always done it, right? Because the way you've always done it may be the, most complex way to do it. I mean, it's an absolute mess. Like we walk into law firms sometimes and they're explaining some of their processes and I'm like, wow,
yeah,
that is dumb, right? Like, you guys know it's dumb? And they're like, well, it's just the way we've always done it.
right.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the scariest thing to hear in any organization. It's like,
Yes.
we've always done it this way. Oh my goodness. What do you think, Jessica? I know this is a topic you're passionate about. What are some ways to solve for this?
I think one thing too, as the firm owner, as you're growing, this certainly happened to me being the process person. I used to oversee all operations. I'm so far removed from the day-to-day now, and that can be a blessing and a curse. But I actually, earlier this year, I met with several people across all departments, and I basically said, walk me through a day in the life. Show me what it is that you're doing. And in this case, it was actually really great that I was so far removed from this, because I was coming in almost like a third party of like, oh, why are you using 2 platforms here? Or I didn't know that wasn't an automatic thing. And so I was able to see a lot of things that were maybe frustrations for the team member, but then also I'm like, oh, this could be so much simpler. So that is one way of addressing that. And then, of course, working with your ops team or whoever it is to be able to actually clean that up. And then we also recently did with our head of people a stop doing audit. And then to your point of any company is like you add and you add and you add, but then it's like, just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. And it's interesting to see the responses, because you have some people who've been here almost 10 years and they're like, that's the way we've always done it. And they're not defensive. They're just stuck in that. And then we changed something. And literally yesterday, someone who was a little resistant to change first. And she's like, I didn't realize how redundant something had become. I'm really glad that we changed it. And so it's actually just taking that step back and looking at it from a different lens.
I'm always interested to see, like, what are the things that we can remove
Yes.
or simplify?
Yes.
And this requires kind of a very, very different perspective, like a bird's eye view.
Yes.
A lot of times it's like you don't see the forest for the trees. So it's if it's within your own department, you think everything is essential and the way you've always done it, because it's familiar, right? And it's what makes you comfortable. So changing something, you got to, neuroplasticity, you got to rewire those pathways in the brain. Not everybody likes that, but that is, I'll tell you, we started the Michael hotline to where if someone in the company is finding themselves doing something that they just cannot understand why they're doing it, or it seems dumb or redundant, to escalate it up to me, because I'm not a fan like this hierarchical stuff of like, well, I need to send it to my manager, and then my manager is going to send it to their manager, and then their leader, and then eventually they're going to suppress it from me because everyone's trying to protect their own status. All right, well, then the tribal hierarchy. But I don't know that any organization should be that way.
Yeah.
And instead, I think we should just be committed to solving problems. And if somebody's doing something that just seems dumb, it may not be. Maybe there's like a actual reason for it. Like there's reasons processes exist, and they should exist because there have to be ways of doing things. There's reasons why we can't just say, okay, YOLO, we're going to start doing this new thing, even though it can impact 4 different departments and like 3 pieces of technology. We have to consider how it's going to impact things like upstream and even downstream. So that's why like you have to have layers of approval. At the same time, you don't want it to spend a week or a month trying to figure out why something is redundant, or if it is redundant, or to potentially never even learn if it is redundant, just because someone thinking, oh, it's pointless, I'm not going to say anything. It doesn't make sense why we do this every day, but I'm going to continue to do it every day of my life. Like, I don't get that.
Yeah, does not make sense. So
Anyway,
that's all we've got for today. Go clean up the processes.
Clean the processes, water your team, water your plants.
There you go.
There you go.
You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogill. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.